The conference chamber aboard the Sovereign Accord flagship gleamed with the light of 1,000 stars. 4 species sat around the holographic display, their forms casting shadows that danced across the metallic walls. They were the rulers of the galaxy, or so they believed. The Genthar chittered through their mandibles, the Delphi sang in their water-filled helmets, the Kryn growled low in their throats, and the Vosh clicked their crystalline fingers together. Together they commanded fleets that numbered in the tens of thousands. Together they had crushed rebellions and absorbed dozens of smaller civilizations. Today, they discussed the newest problem in their domain: humanity. The humans have refused our generous offer, High Commander Zethkar of the Genthar announced. His compound eyes reflected the star map before them, where human territory glowed in soft blue. They claim the systems we demand are their sovereign territory. They speak of rights and laws. Admiral Suresh of the Delphi made a sound like rushing water. In my 300 cycles of service, I have seen this pattern before. A young species enters the galactic stage, receives our protection and trade benefits, then grows arrogant. They forget who maintains order in this galaxy. The human military is negligible, General Kroth of the Kryn added, pulling up tactical data. Our intelligence shows they maintain only minimal defense forces. Their ships are designed for exploration and commerce. In 80 years of galactic presence, they have never fought a single war. Not one battle of significance. Chancellor Vrix of the Vosh tapped the holographic display, zooming into human space. They are soft. They send diplomats instead of soldiers. They write treaties instead of conquest proclamations. When we presented our ultimatum, their ambassador actually tried to negotiate, as if they had any leverage to bargain. The chamber filled with sounds of alien laughter. It was absurd, really. The humans controlled barely 20 star systems, while the Accord commanded over 400. Human population across all their worlds numbered only 15 billion, while the Accord counted populations in the trillions. Every calculation, every strategic model, every piece of intelligence pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity would fall in weeks, perhaps days. They requested 72 hours to respond, Zethkar said. No doubt they are evacuating their leaders, preparing to surrender. It is the logical choice for them. And if they do not surrender? Kroth asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Then we demonstrate what happens to species who refuse the Accord's wisdom, Zethkar replied. The galaxy must see that order is maintained. That peace comes through strength and submission. The vote was unanimous. The Accord would take what they demanded, by force if necessary. Fleet orders went out immediately. Over 12,000 warships began moving toward human space, a wave of overwhelming power that would crash through any resistance. The smaller species in the galaxy watched through their long-range sensors, already preparing messages of condolence for humanity's inevitable defeat. On Earth, in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, a very different meeting was taking place. The room was simple, functional, with no decoration except for old flags and a single screen showing the Accord's ultimatum. Around a plain metal table sat the leaders of the United Human Command. Their faces were tired but calm, like teachers who had just been told their most difficult student was about to throw a tantrum. They think we're weak, Admiral Chen said flatly. She was a small woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many simulations, too many training exercises that the rest of the galaxy never knew about. Intelligence confirms their positioning for a full invasion. General Okonkwo nodded, his dark hands folded on the table. The civilian evacuations are ahead of schedule. Every non-essential person will be off the border worlds within 48 hours. The Accord thinks we're running scared. Let them think that, President Torres said. She looked at each person around the table. Are we in agreement? They've given us no choice. They've mistaken our preference for peace as inability to wage war. Defense Minister Yamamoto spoke quietly. For 80 years, we've kept our true capabilities hidden. We've shared our art, our culture, our medicine. We've been model citizens of the galaxy. We've negotiated, compromised, and cooperated, and they see all of that as weakness. They don't know, Admiral Chen said, a ghost of a smile on her lips. They've never seen human history. They don't know about the Somme, Stalingrad, or Midway. They don't know we spent 5,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other before we reached the stars. They think 80 years of peace means we've forgotten. We haven't forgotten, General Okonkwo said. We just hoped we'd never need to remember. The vote was quick and unanimous. President Torres composed the message herself. keeping it short and simple. It was transmitted on all frequencies, ensuring every species in the galaxy would hear it. To the Sovereign Accord, you demanded our submission. You threatened our extinction. You mistook our love of peace for weakness. This was your mistake, not ours. Since you wanted war, we'll give you a masterclass. Human command out. Then Earth went silent. No more diplomatic channels. No more negotiations. No more pleasant conversations about trade and culture. The human networks went dark. Their communication arrays shut down, their borders sealed. To the Accord, it looked like a civilization in panic, cutting itself off in fear. To humanity, it was something else entirely. It was the sound of safeties being switched off, of war machines powering up, of soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war they prayed would never come, finally receiving their orders. The Accord fleets crossed into human space at 0600 Standard Galactic Time. They expected to find desperate defenders, hastily assembled militias, perhaps some brave fools making a final stand. What they found instead would rewrite every military manual in the galaxy. The masterclass was about to begin, and the tuition would be paid in blood. The Accord's first fleet entered the Proxima Centauri system, expecting to find humans scrambling to defend their oldest colony. What Commander Zethkar found instead was emptiness. The space stations were there, intact and powered, but silent. The orbital platforms hung in space like abandoned toys. The planet below showed no defensive formations, no weapon signatures, no fleet presence. "Scan for life signs," Zethkar ordered. His mandibles clicked nervously. "Colony appears evacuated, Commander," his sensor operator reported, detecting only automated systems. No military presence. It was the same story at the next 3 systems. Empty colonies, deserted stations, nothing but ghosts and echoes. The Accord forces pushed deeper into human space, growing more confident with each abandoned world. The humans had run. They had actually run. "This is easier than predicted," Admiral Suresh transmitted from his flagship. "The humans have shown their true nature. Cowards who flee rather than fight." That was when the first ships started disappearing. It began with the scout vessels. They would jump ahead of the main fleet, scan a system, and then simply stop transmitting. At first, Command assumed it was communication problems. Then they assumed it was equipment failure. By the time they realized it was something else, they had lost over 40 scouts and no one had heard a single distress call. "How does a ship disappear without sending any signal?" General Croth demanded. "Our vessels have automatic distress beacons. They activate even if the crew is dead." No one had an answer. The Accord fleets continued forward more carefully now, keeping tighter formations. They reached the human world of New Nairobi, a planet that intelligence said contained major industrial centers. It would be their first real target, the first blow in their campaign. The defenses that rose to meet them looked almost primitive. Orbital platforms that seemed little more than armed cargo containers. Defense satellites that spun lazily in space. A few dozen ships that looked like they had been hastily converted from civilian designs. "This is their defense," Croth transmitted. "A handful of retrofitted cargo haulers." The Accord fleet opened fire at maximum range. Confident in their superior numbers and firepower, their plasma lances reached out across the void, brilliant streams of superheated death. The human platforms should have vaporized. Instead, something impossible happened. The platforms moved. Not with thrusters, but with sudden, violent, evasive maneuvers that should have torn them apart with their own acceleration. Accord weapons missed by kilometers. Before the gunners could adjust, the human platforms returned fire. The weapons that came back were unlike anything in the Accord arsenal. Solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds, accelerated by electromagnetic rails to velocities that made them hit like small asteroids. They punched through shields that were rated to stop plasma and particle beams. They went through armor plating like it was paper. 3 Accord cruisers died in the first salvo, their reactors exploding in bright flowers of destruction. "Evasive action," Suresh screamed. All ships evasive, the converted human freighters opened their cargo bays. What spilled out wasn't cargo. Thousands of small craft, each no bigger than a fighter, emerged in a cloud of metal and fury. They moved in perfect coordination like a school of fish or a flock of birds, but faster and more precise than any organic mind could manage. "They're using artificial intelligence to coordinate," a Delphi tactical officer shouted. "Advanced AI swarm tactics. That's forbidden technology." It was forbidden among the Accord species, considered too dangerous, too unpredictable. Humans apparently had no such concerns. The drone swarms tore through Accord fighter screens like they weren't there. They worked together in ways that seemed almost telepathic, focusing fire on weak points, exploiting every gap in the formation, and adapting to every defensive maneuver. Kroth's flagship rocked as something hit it. Damage reports flooded in. "Impossible," he muttered. "We outnumber them 50-1. How are we losing?" From the human platforms, a transmission came through on all channels. It was a human voice, calm and almost academic in tone. Lesson 1. Technology matters less than how you use it. You built your shields to stop the weapons you know. We built our weapons to go through shields. You fight with the tactics that worked for 1,000 years. We've spent 5,000 years learning new ones. The voice paused as another Accord battleship exploded, torn apart by focused railgun fire. Lesson 2. Combined arms warfare. Your species developed in isolation from each other. Each of you perfected one type of fighting. You never learned to make different forces work together seamlessly. We've been doing that since we invented cavalry and infantry. The human ships weren't fighting individually. They were fighting as a single organism, each part supporting the others. The platforms provided long-range fire. The converted freighters launched swarms, and the combat ships exploited the chaos to deliver killing blows. It was coordination on a level the Accord had never imagined possible. "Retreat," Sethkar ordered. "Pull back to Rally Point Gamma." But the humans had predicted that too. As the Accord fleets turned to flee, they found more human ships waiting, emerging from positions behind moons and asteroids where they had been hiding in complete sensor silence. The retreat became a rout. In the command bunker on Earth, Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays with the same expression a chess master might wear when watching an amateur fall into an obvious trap. Around her, officers monitored thousands of data streams, coordinating forces across multiple systems with a precision that came from centuries of military doctrine, refined through countless wars. "First engagement complete," General Okonkwo reported. "Enemy casualties approximately 40%. Our losses: 3 platforms, 18 drones, 0 manned vessels. They're broadcasting on all frequencies," a communications officer said, calling the engagement a temporary setback, claiming they underestimated our determination. "They still don't understand," Admiral Chen said quietly. "They think we just got lucky. They think we fought harder than expected. They don't realize yet that we've been preparing for this since before we left Earth. Every ship we built had military conversion in mind. Every peaceful year we spent mapping their tactics, their psychology, their weaknesses." President Torres's face appeared on a screen. "The galactic community is watching." Reactions? "Shock, mostly," the communications officer replied. "The smaller species are reassessing their opinions of us. The Accord is trying to maintain the narrative that this was a minor defeat." "Let them," Torres said. "Every battle they fight will explain exactly what we're doing and why it works. Make them watch as we dismantle their fleets piece by piece. This isn't just a war, it's a lesson. By the time we're done, every species in the galaxy will understand that humanity chose peace not because we had to, but because we wanted to." The Accord forces regrouped at Rally Point Gamma, damaged and confused. They had lost over 5,000 ships in their first engagement with human forces. It should have been impossible. They still outnumbered the humans significantly, still had more resources, more territory, more of everything except what mattered most. They didn't have humanity's desperate, hard-won knowledge of how to wage total war, and they were about to learn that lesson the hardest way possible. The Accord High Command met in emergency session aboard a neutral station, far from the front lines. The atmosphere in the chamber had changed dramatically from their last meeting. Where there had been confidence and mockery, now there was tension and barely hidden fear. "We must adjust our strategy," Sethkar said, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "The humans have proven more capable than anticipated." "More capable?" General Kroth slammed his fist on the table. "They destroyed half of our first fleet, with technology we didn't even know they possessed. Our intelligence failed us," Chancellor Vrix admitted. "We assumed their peaceful behavior indicated weakness. We never considered it might indicate confidence." Admiral Suresh studied the tactical reports with growing horror. "They're not fighting like any species we've encountered. Each battle they use different tactics. Against the Genthar forces in the Arcturus sector, they deployed chemical weapons that disrupted pheromone communication. Against my own fleets near Tau Ceti, they used sonic weapons that shattered our aquatic crew members' concentration. Against the Kryn, they used psychological warfare, broadcasting images and sounds that triggered their predator instincts at the wrong times. How do they know so much about us? Vrix asked. How do they know exactly what will affect each species? The answer came from an unexpected source. One of Vrix's intelligence officers stepped forward, her crystalline form dimming with what her species expressed as shame. For 80 years, we welcomed humans into our space. They asked questions about our biology, our psychology, our history. We thought they were being friendly, learning about us out of curiosity. We told them everything. The silence in the chamber was absolute. They were gathering intelligence, Kroth said slowly, for 80 years. While we thought they were naive newcomers learning about the galaxy, they were studying us, learning our weaknesses. Another officer transmitted a data package to the central display. It showed intercepted human communications, encrypted but eventually broken. What the Accord leadership saw made their blood run cold in their respective physiologies. Humans had detailed psychological profiles on every Accord species. They knew that Genthar relied heavily on pheromone communication and became disoriented without it. They knew that Delphi experienced intense discomfort from certain sound frequencies. They knew that Kryn had deep instinctual responses to specific visual patterns. They knew that Vosh crystalline biology was vulnerable to certain electromagnetic frequencies, and they had built weapons specifically designed to exploit every single weakness. This is monstrous, Suresh whispered. To weaponize friendship, to turn our openness against us. A human transmission interrupted their meeting. It was broadcast on all frequencies, public for the entire galaxy to hear. The voice was the same calm academic tone from the previous battle. Lesson 3, Know Your Enemy. A human named Sun Tzu wrote this over 2,000 years ago. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. You knew nothing about us except what we chose to show you. We knew everything about you because you assumed friendship meant trust. The transmission showed tactical displays from recent battles, annotated with explanations. Against the Genthar, we employed chemical warfare targeting pheromone receptors. Your species evolved with pheromone-based communication as primary. Remove that and your unit cohesion collapses. This is combined arms doctrine. Attack not just the body but the ability to coordinate. Another battle appeared on screen. Against the Delphi, sonic weapons tuned to frequencies painful to your aquatic sensory organs. You trained your crews to fight in the silence of space, but your biology never adapted. Your people wear water-filled helmets. We simply had to find the right frequency to turn those helmets into torture devices. A third battle, against the Kryn. Psychological warfare using visual patterns that trigger hunting instincts at tactically disadvantageous moments. Your people are proud warriors with strong predator heritage. We studied your entertainment, your training simulations, and your cultural practices. We learned how to make your greatest strength become a weakness. The transmission paused. Lesson 4, Total War. You think of warfare as a political tool, a method of achieving specific goals with minimal force. Humans learned warfare differently. For millennia, we fought wars of survival where losing meant extinction. We learned to use every advantage, exploit every weakness, and give no quarter until victory was absolute. The tactical display shifted to show something new. Human special forces moving through Accord ships in ways that should have been impossible. They wore armor that bent light, making them nearly invisible. They moved with a coordination that suggested enhanced neural links. And they weren't just fighting. You're seeing footage from your own ships, the voice continued. What humans call special operations forces. We've boarded 47 of your command vessels in the last week. We haven't destroyed them. We've been learning from your computer systems, reading your communications and mapping your entire command structure. Across the chamber, every Accord leader checked their own ship's security status. The reports came back green, but now they wondered if they could trust those reports. Lesson 5, Information Warfare. You encrypt your communications with quantum systems you believe are unbreakable. You're correct. We can't break them, but we can hack the systems before encryption occurs or after decryption happens. We can read your mail because you never imagined someone would infiltrate your ships without you knowing. The transmission ended with a simple statement. The Masterclass continues. Every battle will show you another lesson, another way humans learn to wage war. You wanted to see our strength. Now you understand. We're not stronger than you. We're not faster or tougher or more numerous. We're just better at this, because we've been doing it longer and learned every lesson in blood. In the bunker on Earth, Admiral Chen turned to her staff. Deploy Phase 2. It's time to show them offensive operations. Human fleets emerged from hiding positions throughout Accord space. They had been there for weeks, concealed in asteroid fields and around gas giants, waiting. The humans had prepared for this war long before it started, positioning forces where they would be most effective. All fleets report ready, General Okonkwo said. We have them surrounded. It was true. The Accord had pushed into human space expecting to conquer it. They hadn't realized they were entering a trap. Every system they occupied was now cut off from resupply. Every fleet they sent forward was now behind human lines. The Accord had sent their forces deep into what they thought was enemy territory, only to discover they had walked into a cage. Begin Operation Clausewitz, Admiral Chen ordered, naming the offensive after another ancient human military philosopher. Across 24 systems, human forces attacked simultaneously, not against military targets but against supply lines. Freighters exploded. Supply depots burned. Communication relays went silent. The Accord fleets in human space suddenly found themselves isolated, running low on fuel and ammunition, unable to call for help. This is the German blitzkrieg applied to space warfare, a human tactical officer explained over public channels. Cut off the supply lines, isolate the enemy forces, and let them starve. We learned this in the 20th century. Lesson 6, an army marches on its stomach. Your forces are now cut off and dying slowly. Surrender is an option, some did. Entire Accord battle groups, seeing no possibility of victory or survival, raised white flags. Humans accepted their surrenders and treated prisoners according to conventions the Accord didn't even know existed. Geneva Conventions, the humans called them. Rules for warfare that seemed strange to the Accord. Why have rules for war? But the humans followed their rules strictly. Prisoners were treated well. Wounded were given medical care, and surrendered forces were disarmed but not harmed. It was another lesson the Accord hadn't expected. Humans waged total war with absolute ruthlessness against those who fought, but showed mercy to those who surrendered. It made more Accord soldiers decide that surrender was better than death. The human masterclass was teaching lessons in morale and psychology, as much as tactics and strategy. The Sovereign Accord faced a choice. They had lost half their military forces. Their supply lines were shattered. Their fleets were scattered and isolated throughout human space. They could negotiate surrender, accept whatever terms humanity demanded, and acknowledge defeat. Instead, they chose pride. We cannot be seen as weak, Zethkar declared to the Emergency Council. If we surrender to humans, every minor species in the galaxy will question our authority. We must commit our reserve forces. Everything we have. Overwhelming numbers will prevail. It was the logic of desperation. The Accord stripped their homeworlds of defenses, pulled garrison forces from subjugated territories, and assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. Over 40,000 warships, representing 60% of their total military might. It was a force that could crack planets, destroy entire civilizations, and reshape the galaxy. They sent it all toward Earth. In the command bunker, Admiral Chen watched the massive fleet approach and allowed herself a thin smile. They've made the mistake we predicted. General Okonkwo, your assessment? They've committed everything to a single decisive battle, the general replied. Classic strategic error. They're thinking like Romans at Cannae, like Napoleon at Waterloo, like the Japanese at Midway. Overwhelming force in a single location, expecting that numbers alone will bring victory. And they've left their homeworlds defenseless, Defense Minister Yamamoto added. We've been moving forces into position for 3 weeks. They were so focused on their grand offensive that they didn't notice our fleets bypassing their main forces entirely. President Torres appeared on screen from a secure location. Are we certain this is the right path? Once we demonstrate our full capabilities, there's no going back. The galaxy will see us differently. They already see us differently, Admiral Chen said. The question is whether they see us as monsters or as teachers. We make that choice now. The Accord fleet entered the solar system expecting to find Earth's defenses concentrated around the homeworld. Instead, they found something that made no tactical sense. Human ships were scattered throughout the system, orbiting Mars, hiding in the asteroid belt stationed near Jupiter's moons. There was no defensive line, no concentrated firepower. It looked like chaos. They're disorganized, Zethkar reported to his fellow commanders. "The battle is already won." That's when the humans sprang their trap. The ships near Mars weren't warships. They were massive railgun platforms anchored to the planet's moons. They opened fire at velocities that made their projectiles invisible to sensors until impact. Accord ships exploded by the dozens before they even knew they were under attack. The asteroid belt wasn't just hiding ships. The asteroids themselves had been hollowed out and filled with missiles, turning the entire belt into the largest minefield in human history. Thousands of rocks that looked natural suddenly lit up with engine flares and streaked toward the Accord fleet. Near Jupiter, the human ships weren't hiding. They were using the gas giant's massive magnetic field to power electromagnetic weapons that could strip shields off ships from millions of kilometers away. The Accord's defensive systems were designed for direct fire, not for attacks that used planetary magnetospheres as weapons. Lesson 7, the human broadcast began, is called Defense in Depth. You don't concentrate all your forces in one location. You spread them out, create multiple defensive layers, and force the enemy to fight through each one. Every layer costs them strength. By the time they reach your final position, they're weakened and disorganized. The Accord fleet pushed forward, taking massive casualties but believing their numbers would prevail. Then they encountered the human Reaper teams. These were soldiers unlike any the galaxy had seen. They wore powered armor that made them faster than any biological being. They carried weapons that ranged from molecular disruptors to simple ancient firearms that worked in any environment. And they had been enhanced with biological and cybernetic modifications that pushed human capabilities to the absolute limit. The Reapers didn't fight like normal soldiers. They teleported onto Accord flagships using short-range quantum tunneling devices. They moved through ships like ghosts, killing with precision and efficiency. But they weren't just killing. They were decapitating the Accord's command structure. Admiral Suresh died in his command chair, killed by a single shot from a weapon that should have been impossible to bring aboard his flagship. General Kroth's ship lost helm control when Reapers sabotaged its navigation systems. Chancellor Vrix watched her bridge crew fall unconscious from a gas that her ship's sensors couldn't detect. Lesson 8. Leadership is a target, the human voice explained calmly while Accord commanders died or were captured. Your command structure is hierarchical and rigid. Cut off the head, and the body struggles to function. We learned this from asymmetric warfare, from guerrilla tactics, from every small force that faced overwhelming odds. You don't need to destroy an army. You just need to destroy its ability to coordinate. The Accord fleet began to fall apart. Without clear leadership, different species forces started using their own tactics which didn't work together. The Genthar retreated while the Kryn pushed forward, creating gaps in the formation. The Delphi tried to regroup while the Vosh attempted to break through, resulting in collisions and confusion. And through it all, human voices broadcast explanations. They described every tactic, every strategy, every principle they were demonstrating. It was like watching a master surgeon explain each cut while performing an operation, except the patient was an entire military alliance. Lesson 9. Psychological warfare. Wars are fought by thinking beings with fears and hopes. Break their morale and you've won half the battle. We're not just fighting your ships. We're fighting your will to continue. Every explanation we give makes you realize how outmatched you are. Every lesson makes you understand that we've thought of everything. Some Accord ships began breaking formation, fleeing the system. Humans let them go, broadcasting their retreat on all frequencies for the galaxy to see. Other ships surrendered. A few fought to the death, and humans respected their bravery even as they destroyed them. In orbit around Earth, Commander Zethkar found himself in command of the remnants of the Grand Fleet. Less than 8,000 ships remained combat effective from the 40,000 they had brought. His mandibles clicked in what his species expressed as despair. A communication came through, audio only. It was Admiral Chen's voice. "Commander Zethkar, this is Human Command. You have two options. You can continue fighting and we will destroy every ship you have left. Your people will remember this as the greatest military disaster in galactic history. Or you can surrender, and we will treat you and your crews with the respect that warriors deserve. You fought bravely. You simply fought against an enemy who has been perfecting warfare for 5,000 years. There is no shame in losing to those with more experience." Zethkar looked at his tactical display. Human ships were in position around his entire fleet. They could destroy his forces at will. But they were offering mercy. It was more than the Accord had ever offered defeated enemies. "What are your terms?" he asked. his voice filled with exhaustion. Unconditional surrender of all Accord military forces, Admiral Chen replied. Complete disarmament of aggressive capabilities. Reparations paid not in resources but in knowledge sharing and technology transfer for peaceful purposes. And most importantly, a 100-year peace treaty with enforcement provisions. And if we refuse, then we demonstrate the final lesson. Totalva, you've seen what we do with conventional warfare. You haven't seen what humans are capable of when we stop holding back. We have weapons we've never used because we hoped we'd never need them. Weapons that make nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. Weapons that could crack planets or boil atmospheres. We built them during our darkest times, swore we'd never use them again, and kept them anyway because we knew someday we might need to threaten their use to prevent war. There was a pause. The choice is yours, Commander. Surrender with honor, or force us to show the galaxy what human desperation truly looks like. Sethkar looked at his bridge crew, young officers who had never expected to fight humans, soldiers who had believed the Accord was invincible, warriors who now knew better. I surrender, he said. On behalf of the Sovereign Accord, I surrender our forces unconditionally. Across the solar system, Accord ships powered down their weapons. The largest fleet ever assembled went silent, defeated not by superior numbers or technology, but by superior doctrine, strategy, and the hard-won lessons of 5,000 years of human warfare. The Masterclass had reached its conclusion. Now came the aftermath, and the galaxy would have to adjust to a new reality where humanity stood as the ultimate authority on organized violence. The surrender ceremony took place aboard a neutral station orbiting Jupiter. It was broadcast live to every corner of the galaxy. Species that had never heard of humans before the war now watched, as the mighty Sovereign Accord formally submitted to a civilization less than a century. Old Commander Sethkar signed the surrender documents with trembling mandibles. Beside him stood Admiral Suresh, recovered from his injuries, General Croth, limping from wounds sustained during the Reaper attack on his flagship, Chancellor Vrix, her crystalline form dimmed with shame. The four leaders who had so confidently voted for war now stood defeated. President Torres signed for humanity. She wore a simple suit, no military uniform, no symbols of power. Beside her stood Admiral Chen and General Okonkwo, both in dress uniforms that displayed medals from conflicts the Accord had never known existed. The document itself was surprisingly simple, written in clear language without legal tricks or hidden clauses. The terms are straightforward, President Torres said, her voice echoing through the station and across the galaxy. The Sovereign Accord will dismantle all offensive military capabilities, retaining only defensive forces sufficient to maintain order in their own territory. You will pay reparations in the form of scientific knowledge, cultural exchange, and assistance in developing peaceful technologies for the benefit of all species. Most importantly, you will commit to 100 years of enforced peace. Enforced by whom? Sethkar asked, though he already knew the answer. By humanity, Torres replied. We will establish monitoring stations in your space. We will maintain peacekeeping forces. We will intervene if any of your species attempts to rebuild offensive capabilities or wage war against others. This is not occupation. This is education. For 100 years you will learn what we learned. That peace is preferable to war, that cooperation builds more than conquest, and that strength is best used to protect rather than to dominate. Chancellor Vrix spoke up, her voice chiming like broken glass. You could destroy us completely. Take our worlds, enslave our people, rule the galaxy. Why don't you? Admiral Chen stepped forward. Because that's not who we are. Yes, we're good at warfare. We spent 5,000 years becoming the best killers in the galaxy. But we also learned something more important during those 5,000 years. We learned that victory in war doesn't mean success in peace. We learned that conquered people don't stay conquered forever. We learned that building is harder than destroying, but infinitely more valuable. She gestured to screens showing human history, battles from ancient times to the space age. Every war we fought taught us something. The Mongols taught us mobility and adaptability. The Romans taught us logistics and organization. The World Wars taught us the horror of total war. The Cold War taught us the madness of mutual destruction. We learned these lessons in blood and fire. Billions of humans died so that we could understand these truths. We won't let those deaths be meaningless by repeating the same mistakes. General Okonkwo continued. You asked for a masterclass in warfare. We gave you one. But the final lesson, the most important lesson, is this. The true purpose of military strength is not to wage war but to prevent it. We became good at war so we would never have to fight again. We prepared for this conflict hoping it would never come. You forced us to remember lessons we tried to forget. President Torres walked to the observation window, looking out at Earth hanging in the distance. When humans left Earth and joined the galactic community, we made a choice. We could be conquerors using our military experience to dominate, or we could be partners sharing everything else we learned. Art, music, philosophy, science. We chose partnership. We chose peace. You mistook that choice for weakness. She turned back to the Accord leaders. Now we make another choice. We could become the tyrants of the galaxy ruling through fear, or we can be teachers helping you understand what we learned so painfully. We choose to teach. But understand this, the lessons are not negotiable. You will learn them, you will internalize them, and in 100 years when we lift the restrictions you will be better than you were. The ceremony concluded. The Accord leaders returned to their homeworlds to begin the process of dismantling their war machines. Human peacekeeping forces deployed throughout Accord space, but they came with engineers and teachers as much as soldiers. They helped rebuild damaged infrastructure. They shared technology for medicine, agriculture, and industry. They demonstrated that the same hands that had destroyed the Accord's military could also build a better future. In the months that followed, the galaxy adjusted to its new reality. Smaller species that had lived in fear of the Accord began to flourish under human protection. Trade routes that had been controlled by Accord military power opened to all. New alliances formed, not based on military strength but on mutual benefit. The Accord species themselves discovered something unexpected. Without the burden of maintaining massive military forces, they could invest in their own people. Science, art, culture, and quality of life all improved. The young people of Accord worlds began to see humans not as conquerors, but as liberators who had freed them from their own government's militarism. Some resented humanity. Some viewed the peacekeeping forces as occupiers, but most came to a grudging respect than genuine appreciation. Humans kept their promises. They didn't steal resources or impose their culture. They simply maintained peace and offered help to those who wanted it. On Earth, a monument was erected in Geneva, the city that had given its name to the conventions for warfare. It was a simple black wall with names inscribed in every human language. The names of everyone who had died in humanity's wars throughout history. Billions of names representing billions of lessons learned in blood. At the top of the monument, in letters large enough to read from orbit, was an inscription. We remember so we never forget. We prepare so we never need to use it. We teach so others never have to learn these lessons the way we did. The monument became a pilgrimage site for species from across the galaxy. Alien visitors would stand before the wall, trying to comprehend the sheer scale of human conflict, the magnitude of suffering that had forged humanity's character. Most left with a new understanding. Humans were dangerous not despite their peaceful nature, but because of it. They knew the true cost of war and chose to avoid it whenever possible. 5 years after the war, a delegation from a young species arrived at Earth. The Caliph were newcomers to the galactic stage, excited to explore and meet other civilizations. They came to humanity with a simple question. We've heard the stories, their ambassador said. We know you defeated the Accord. We know you're the most powerful military force in the galaxy. We want to learn from you. Will you teach us to be warriors like you? Admiral Chen, now retired but still consulted on important matters, met with them personally. Is your species threatened? She asked. No, the ambassador replied, but we want to be strong. We want to be respected. We want others to fear us the way they fear humanity. Chen smiled sadly. Then you've misunderstood everything. Species fear humanity not because we're strong, but because we know exactly what our strength can do. We don't want your species to learn warfare. We want you to learn what we learned after warfare. Cooperation, diplomacy, the value of peace. Those are the lessons that matter. But what if someone threatens us? The ambassador pressed. What if we need to defend ourselves? Then we'll help you, Chen replied simply. That's the point of the Terran Accords. You don't need to become warriors because we already are. You don't need to learn the lessons we learned because we can apply those lessons on your behalf. Build your civilization. Create art, explore science, develop your culture. Leave the fighting to those of us who already know how to do it and understand why we shouldn't. The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. You're offering to protect us, to fight our battles. What do you want in return? Join the galactic community as peaceful members, Chen said. Share your knowledge, your culture, your unique perspective. Help us build a galaxy where war becomes obsolete. That's all we ask. The protection is free because we've learned that preventing wars costs less than fighting them. As the Caliph delegation left, Chen looked out at the stars and thought about the message that had started the war. Since you wanted war, we'll give you a masterclass. They had done exactly that. But the final lesson, the one that mattered most, was that the best warriors are those who never want to fight. Across the galaxy, a new peace took hold. Not the peace of submission, but the peace of understanding. Not the peace enforced by fear, but the peace built on wisdom. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of in war, and in doing so had made war itself less likely. The Terran Accords became the foundation for galactic civilization. Humans maintained their military strength, but used it only to protect others and prevent conflict. They remained the galaxy's ultimate authority on warfare, respected and feared, but also trusted because everyone understood that humans chose not to fight. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't defeating the Accord. It was teaching the galaxy that those who truly understand war are the last ones to wage it, and the first ones to prevent it. The Masterclass had taught its final lesson, and the galaxy was better for it. On the monument in Geneva, humans added one final inscription years after the war ended. It was a quote from an ancient human philosopher named Plato: "Only the dead have seen the end of war." Below it, humanity added their own response: "Then we, the living, will ensure as few as possible join them,